Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. Sometimes we hear something on social media or in the news, and we sit back and we think, well, that's really not my experience. And then if we dig deeper, we see why what we see in the headlines is true, but not accurate. Recently, I've seen a lot of articles coming out about rents softening. I actually saw that in Washington state, where I invest, rents are down about 7%. And I've quoted many times on my channel a little fact about rents that since we've started tracking the data in 1940, rents have never once gone down. And every now and then I'll get somebody who argues with me in the comments, and we're both right in this argument. So I have today with me Dana, the CEO of Hemline, who has last count, I think 24,000 rental units on the platform. It's probably more than that now. I think there was 4,000 owners on there. So you have a mountain of data to go through. And I'm kind of springing this topic on you, but I'm going to point out two things and then I'm going to ask your opinion. The first is if you go online and you look at when rents went down in 2009, it looks like rents went down. And that's because Class A luxury rentals did take a dip. I invest specifically in Class C properties, but C and Class B properties didn't go down. They went up. When we had all of the foreclosures, millions of them, the people who lost their homes became renters. They didn't go and rent a $5,000 a month full amenities apartment. They went and rented a house or a part of a duplex, and rental demand for Class C and B properties went up. What we're seeing now, since 2020, with the shift of remote work, this is the second thing, remote work being more of an option than at any point in our entire lives. The reason I got my most recent purchase is because remote workers can travel another 30 to 45 minutes away from the city because they're only going into the office once or twice a week or not at all. And right now, the statistic is 54% of Americans are still required, who have a job, are required to go to the office. Sounds like a lot until you flip the numbers. 46% aren't. That's a huge amount of people. So I expanded my market out another 30 to 45 minutes. I found a couple of markets where rents had pushed up because they were pushing down in the metro areas because people don't have to live where the work is now. So
Yep.
the Class A areas, the highly densely populated areas, rents are going to soften and come down, like Seattle. The article I just read actually specifically said Seattle and Tacoma areas. But if you push out, I went out to Kitsap and Mason counties. I saw rents. A two-bedroom that I'm renting out about 3 years ago would have went for 12 or $1,300. I just rented it for 21, 25 with a lot of pressure for people getting it because there's so many people who can work remotely out here. Rents have pushed up because they can't buy. Some can, some will. But what the fear of most remote workers is that next year or the following year, their employer is going to pull them back into the office. We hear Tesla and all these other large companies saying, come back to the office or you're fired. And so they don't want to buy, but they can rent further out to get out of the city. So in the areas that I invest, in the asset class that I invest, rents are pushing up. But like 2009, Class A is seeing a dip, and the metro areas are going to see a dip. So that is my microscopic opinion of a macroscopic reality. And now we have somebody with the macro data. What is happening with rents?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what's interesting is we have both Class A and all the way to Class D properties, primarily B and C on Hemley, but we do have that range. And there's a couple of things that I would say there. The first is localization, to your point, and knowing your market and knowing what's going on in your market is so important. Like you can't take these blanket statements and apply them to your market. The second thing I would say from doing rent renewals in the system and seeing how much rent is increasing or decreasing is that, and then you would also say, oh, maybe tenants are moving out to get to cheaper property, right, in the area if they think the rental rate is too high. We're actually not seeing that at all. And what we're seeing is that if you have a tenant in there and they're paying rent, are landlords increasing it? There was a point where increases were like an average of like 6 to 7% year over year, which is unheard of because it used to be, average of 3%. And this was like, 2 years ago, like insane amounts of year over year increases in rent just based on the market. Are we seeing that? No. And we're also seeing quite a few owners basically say, I'm just keeping rent, same price. Maybe I'm only increasing it $5, $10. We're not seeing what we saw during COVID, where in cities, like in big cities and especially in luxury apartments, folks were saying, like landlords were saying, great, let me give you some sort of concession. Let me go ahead and drop the rent. Like we are absolutely not seeing that. I think when you hear about rents softening and month over month or year over year, it's important to know, like, and actually look at, are they talking about just the nominal rent amount? Are they talking about renewals? Because renewals are different than properties on market. Like, are the renewals just staying steady and people are renewing at the same price, increasing, which is what we see? Is it the properties on market that we've seen maybe the prices go down slightly? Or the third one that I love that I see so often in these is the when they talk about year over year increases, they might say, hey, last year rents were increasing by 6% year over year. Now rents are increasing by 2% year over year or 1% year over year. And so they're saying it's declining. Well, it's not. You're still increasing rent by 1 to 2 to 3%. It's just that it's not 6% year over year like you saw the year before. And so I think knowing what the numerator nominator are and how they're looking at the math is definitely important, because I do think headline news is supposed to be clickbait to some extent. They want you to read it. They want something that's different. They want something that's potentially controversial or that people have to think about a little bit. And so, yeah, I think in our, from what I've seen across, we've got just over 27,000 rentals on the platform. And what we have seen is rents not declining. Rents are increasing slightly. They are not increasing where they used to. When it was 5% plus was an easy conversation to have with tenants, especially in like the inflationary days that we saw historically.
So one of the last things I'll kind of include here on what's happening with rents is something that the people watching can actually do too for your local area, because rents are local, your localized market. What I'm going to do is share what happened with Section 8 in this year. And actually, before I share, the way the Housing Authority HUD does their rents is they look at the last 7 years, but they don't count the most recent two. So they take an average of these five. So right now we're starting to see 2021, 2022 roll in when we saw massive increases after what happened in 2020. So look up your local county. You go online, you look up fair market rents. It'll take you to this website. You want to look up what happened for 2024. Look up your state. I'm in Pierce, Thurston, and Kitsap County. So let me see, Pierce County here. So what this will do is it'll list what rents were last year, 2023, and what they are now. So most of mine are 2 or 3 bedroom. I have a 4 bedroom, but for rents to go from 23 to 28, it's a $500 increase. This started January 1st, 2024. That doesn't mean rents in 2024 in an area will spike up $500 for a 3 bedroom. I'm sure somebody watching will understand what a percentage that is. But what this does mean that the majority of landlords do the opposite of what I do. Most landlords like for their leases to end in the summer because it's easier to find a tenant. I specifically have my leases end in the winter because people don't like to move. That's why it's easier to find a tenant in the summer, and one of the reasons why I have such low tenant turnover. So the leases that are renewing in the next 3 to 4 months will be in a market where the housing authority will pay $500 more than they were a year ago. So why would somebody rent to not Section 8 at $300 or $400 less than what they can get from the state without doing a significant rent increase? So what we'll see in my state is that increase going forward here for the second half of 2024. This comes out by October 1st every year. You can see what's coming up for the next year to kind of plan for it. I went through several fair market rent counties and I didn't find anywhere the rents had gone down. I did find some where the rents only went up $40 to $90. But there are some states like mine where there was a significant jump. I have a Section 8 rental that in 2022 was at $2,200 and now it's at $3,000 2 years later. That's why when I see headlines of rents are softening, I think the average person might sit back and go, well, why would I buy an asset if rents are coming down? Are you buying in a metro area? Are you buying Class A luxury? Because that's not what's happening with the other types of asset classes that there are. And so if you're seeing the same thing, and I do love a 6% increase last year versus a 2 or 3% increase this year means that rent increases are coming down.
Yes,
Truly true, but misleading. It's like when they say, well, inflation is only down to 3%. Things are costing less now. That's not what they mean.
exactly.
Only costing 3% more than the 9% we had at its peak. I appreciate you coming on here, Dana, to help me clear this up. Um, if you find anything that comes out with rents, please let me know because I make decisions based on what's happening today,
Yeah.
but I like to know what to do going forward. I would not look at a rental and think, because I think this will happen with rents in 6 months, either an increase or a decrease. This will affect my buying. It's based on current area average rents. And I take that from something Warren Buffett says, where he says, I don't, even if I knew what interest rates were going to be in 2 years, it wouldn't impact how I invest. Any closing thoughts and how can people find you on what is going on with rents?
Yeah, I love the data approach to it. I love that you showed us the government website and how Section 8 is looking at increases and using the data over 7 years, but really the 5 years before the past two. If you do want to look at rent estimates, we also have a rent estimate calculator using data of what's in your market. And I think that's really important as well, looking at what properties are in your market, trends over time. And that's completely free for you to use. It's on our resources tab at www.hemlane.com. And yes, look forward to continuing to track this over time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dana.
Thanks so much, Dion.
Thank you too. Until our next video, thanks for coming to my Dion and Dana talk.